you? I don't know you.
The bag of chin-chin crinkled. That was the sound Amadi would carry for the rest of his life. Not her voice. Not the laughter of her friends cutting through the afternoon air like something sharp and practiced. Not the shuffle of his own worn boots on the university pavement as he turned and walked away. Just the sound of that cellophane bag tightening in his grip, the small, stupid, devastating sound of a father holding on to the only thing he had left to hold. He had packed it the night before. Sat at the kitchen table in ABA with the workshop lamp throwing yellow light across his hands, those hands, always the hands, grease living permanently in the lines of them no matter how hard he scrubbed, and he had measured out the chin-chin carefully, the kind from the woman at the corner of their street, Adora's favorite since she was 4 years old. He had tied the neck with a piece of string. He had written a card. He had tried, at least, had sat with the pen over the paper for a long time and could not find words big enough, so he had written only, "From Papa. With love." Folded it. Tucked it under the string. Emeka had watched him from the doorway the whole time and said nothing. For hours on 2 buses. Through Enugu and up to Nsaka, the landscape changing outside the window, the air thinning slightly as they climbed. Amadi had eaten nothing. He was too full of something else, anticipation, maybe, or the particular joy of a father who is about to see his child and has been counting down to it without admitting he was counting. He found the faculty. A kind student walked him pathway. He came around the corner of a building into a wide courtyard, blinking in the afternoon light. And there she was. His daughter. In a white shirt and dark trousers, her head thrown back, laughing at something one of her friends had said. So alive. So completely, devastatingly Chidima in the angle of her jaw, the way she laughed with her whole body, his late wife, reproduced in this young woman who carried her mother's face into a world Chidima never got to see. My daughter, he thought. Look at her. He raised his hand. He called her name. And then he watched her face do something he had never seen it do. A rapid, terrible transformation, recognition becoming calculation becoming cold. A door slamming shut behind her eyes. Deliberate. Practiced. "Uncle," she said. Her voice was smooth. She did not even flinch. "I think you have the wrong person. I don't know you." Someone in her group laughed. Just a breath, really. But it landed on Amadi's chest like a stone dropped from a very great height. He stood very still. "I don't know you." His name was Amadi Okafor. He had been repairing cars on Isaiku Road since before this girl could walk. He had held her when she cried at night and told her that her mother was watching from somewhere good. He had stitched her school bag when the strap tore. He had sold his late wife's sewing machine, the one he could not bring himself to touch for 2 years after she died, so that this girl could afford the acceptance fee for the university she was now standing in, surrounded by friends who were watching him with mild, amused curiosity. He had carried Chin-Chin on a bus for 4 hours. She did not know him. He nodded once. The way a man nods when something has shattered inside him and he is deciding, in real time, whether anyone else gets to see it. He picked up his bag. He turned. He walked toward the university gate without looking back, because if he looked back, if he saw her face already turning away, already moving on, something in him would come apart on a public street in Saka, and he was not going to give anyone that. The gate swallowed him. Outside, the world was catastrophically normal. A motorcycle honked. A woman fried akara at the roadside. Students brushed past him, seeing nothing. Amadi found the bus stop. He sat down. He placed the Chin-Chin on his lap. He did not open it. He held it the entire 4 hours back to ABA. Do not look away from this story. What just happened is only the beginning, and what comes next will cost everyone something they cannot get back. 5 years earlier, Amadi was not a man who had much, but he was a man who understood the difference between having enough and having nothing, and he had spent his entire adult life on the right side of that line through sheer, relentless work. The workshop on Eziaku Road was his. Built from an apprenticeship and 30 years of dirty hands and a reputation that meant something on that street. Amadi go fix am. That was what they said. Bring it broken, take it back working. He had never failed that promise. He had married Chidinma at 31 and she had been, without question or competition, the best thing that ever happened to him. Loud and warm and completely incapable of letting anything go without having words about it first, which drove him mad and which he now missed with a physical ache, the way you miss a limb. She died on a Tuesday morning, an illness that moved faster than their prayers, and left behind a 13-year-old daughter and a husband who did not know how to fall apart in front of children, so he held it in the workshop at night where no one could see him and then came back in the morning and made breakfast. Edeora was Chidinma's face on a younger body. Same jaw. Same laugh. Amadi looked at his daughter every morning and felt two things simultaneously, love so fierce it scared him, and grief so heavy he sometimes had to grip the workshop table to stay standing. He also had Emeka. Emeka was not his son by blood. He was the son of Amadi's younger brother Chukwudi, who had died when Emeka was 8, something fast and merciless, and whose wife had remarried and moved to Onitsha and made it quietly, unmistakably clear that the child was not part of a new arrangement. So Amadi had gone to the school, signed what needed signing, brought the boy home, put him in the small room, and said, "This is your home. Nobody is sending you anywhere." Emeka had looked at him with eyes that were too serious for an 8-year-old and said, "Thank you, sir." That night Amadi had heard Edeora go into the boy's room. He watched from the hallway, saying nothing. She put a biscuit on his pillow without a word and went back to her room. He had loved her so completely in that moment that it made him dizzy. 12 years later, he would be standing at a bus stop in Saka holding a bag of chin-chin, and that memory would return to him on the bus ride home like a wound reopening, and he would think, where did that girl go? Where did the girl who put a biscuit on a lonely boy's pillow go? He would not have an answer. The house was not a cruel house. This is crucial to understand. There was no villain in it, no deliberate malice, no one twisting knives. The damage it did was quiet and consistent and almost impossible to see while it was happening, which is the most dangerous kind of damage there is. Amadi did not decide to love his daughter more than his nephew. It accumulated through 100 small choices that each seemed reasonable in isolation but revealed their true shape only when you stepped back and looked at them together. When school fees competed in the same month, Adora's were paid first. She attended Jubilee Road Secondary School, modest private, better structure, more attention. Emeka attended community secondary, which was adequate, which was not the same thing. When Amadi replaced Adora's school shoes, Emeka's were still the ones from last year. When he sat with Edeora over her homework, Emeka sat nearby and absorbed what he could without being invited to the table. On the workshop wall, a framed photo. Amadi and Chidinma on their wedding day, and below it, a photo of Edeora at 10, gap-toothed, laughing, full of herself. The frame held both images as one object. Emeka was not in the photo. He never mentioned this. Not once. And Amadi, who prided himself on noticing things, who could diagnose an engine by sound alone, never thought about it. Not until it was far too late to matter in the way it should have mattered. One evening Emeka came to sit beside him at the workbench. The boy was 16, his voice newly settled, something deliberate and still about him that had been developing for years, the particular stillness of a child who has learned that the world does not automatically make space for him. "Papa," he said. "I passed my mock exams." Amadi was cleaning a carburetor. "Good," he said. "Good boy." He went back to the carburetor. Emeka sat there a moment longer. Amadi felt the boy sitting there, felt it the way you feel a draft, and did not look up. There was a Toyota coming in tomorrow. He needed to finish this tonight. Emeka stood. Went inside. The door closed softly. Amadi kept walking. He is always fine, Amadi told himself. Emeka is always fine. This was the lie he told himself, so he did not have to ask the question. And the lie worked, because Emeka made it work, constructed his fineness so thoroughly, so quietly, so without complaint, that it became effortless to believe in it. To rely on it. This is how the damage was done. Not with raised voices. With a carburetor. With a soft closed door. With silence settling over the spaces where acknowledgement should have been. WAC results came on a Thursday. Both of them passed. Emeka's aggregate was higher by 2 points. Nobody said this aloud. It hung in the air of the compound like smoke that everyone breathed but no one named. Amadi did the numbers 3 times on a notepad. They did not change. University forms, JAM, acceptance fees, accommodation, he could not manage both. Not this year. He sat under the workshop lamp until the numbers blurred, and then sat a while longer because he did not want to say what he was about to say. He called them outside at dusk. He looked at the 2 young people in front of him, his daughter and his nephew, both of whom he had fed and clothed and prayed over, both watching him with careful, braced faces, and he said, "I will send Edeora first. She is my daughter. Her mother would have wanted it. Emeka, you are my son too. But I need 1 more year. Work with me. We save. Your time will come." Emeka's jaw tightened. One small, involuntary movement, the body betraying what the face refused to show. Then it released. "Yes, Papa. I understand." Edeora grabbed Amadi's arm, already talking about what to pack. Emeka walked back inside. He closed the door gently. That night, in the small room, Emeka lay on his back and had a conversation with himself that no one else would ever hear. 2 points, he thought. I scored 2 points higher. He did not say this to feel sorry for himself. He said it to look at it clearly. To hold it to the light and decide what it meant and what it did not mean and what he was going to do with it. He thought about 5 years of early mornings. 5 years of sweeping before school, answering the workshop phone, tracking invoices, chasing customers who were slow to pay. 5 years of sitting at the edge of a table that had room for him but had not been set for him. He thought about the photo on the wall. I could be angry, he thought. I have enough material to be very, very angry. And then, but he came. When there was no one else, he came to the school and signed the papers and brought me home and said nobody is sending you anywhere. That was real. That mattered. So what do I do with both of those things at the same time? The ceiling had no answer. Emeka breathed slowly in the dark until he found his own. I become someone he cannot overlook. Not out of bitterness. Out of self-respect. He slept. In the morning he was up before anyone. He swept the workshop. He made Amadi's tea. When Edeora came out yawning, he moved aside without being asked. He was always fine. But now it was a choice, not a reflex. That difference, invisible to everyone else, was everything to him. Edeora arrived at UNN in September and understood within 2 weeks that she had not escaped anything. She had simply traded one set of limitations for another, more expensive set. She had imagined university as a door. What it was, in practice, was a mirror. And what it showed her, standing next to Tochi, who wore old money like skin, who spoke about her father's company the way you mentioned the weather, was a girl from Izaiku Road whose father's hands were permanently stained with other people's engines. Tochi was not cruel. That was the trap. She was warm and funny and she liked Edeora immediately, and this created a problem that cruelty could never have created, because now Edeora had to maintain the friendship, which meant maintaining the version of herself that Tochi had befriended. Your dad, what does he do? He's in the automobile industry. Technically true. Delivered to suggest something it was not. She watched Tochi nod and move on and felt something loosen in her chest, followed immediately by something tightening in its place, something she recognized, distantly, as the sensation of a door closing that you cannot reopen from the outside. She stopped mentioning ABA. She borrowed Tochi's blazer for the departmental photograph. She curated herself the way you stage a room before guests arrive, hiding everything that might raise questions, arranging the rest to imply a different story. Amadi called every Sunday at 7. She picked up the first Sunday. The second Sunday she was in Tochi's room and letting it ring felt, in the moment, easier than stepping outside to speak Igbo on the phone in a voice that sounded like where she was actually from. The third Sunday she silenced it before the second ring and sat with the phone face down for an hour, not looking at it, feeling the specific weight of what she had just done settle into her chest like something with permanence. Back in ABA, Emeka watched the phone ring from across the workshop. He called her himself. Ada. Pick up for Papa. He worries. I'm busy, Emeka. Tell him I'm fine. Emeka held the phone after she hung up. He looked at Amadi, who was pretending to be absorbed in the engine he was working on and was fooling neither of them. She says she is fine, Papa. Good. Good. The workshop was very quiet after that. And then came the Sunday that changed everything. It started small, the way catastrophes always do. Edeora was in the university cafe with Tochi when her phone lit up. Papa. She watched the screen glow and pause. Watched it go dark. Tochi glanced at it. You're not taking that. Wrong number situation, Edeora said. The lie was immediate and completely effortless, and that is, that total absence of friction, should have frightened her. It did not. She was becoming very good at this. What she did not know was that Amadi, at that exact moment, had put the phone down in the workshop and made a decision. 3 months of Sundays going unanswered. 3 months of 3-minute calls that felt like someone had one hand on the door the whole time. He was not angry. He was a father, which meant he had converted the anger into worry long ago, the way certain metals transform entirely under sustained heat. He thought, I will go and see her. I will surprise her. She will be happy. He packed the chin-chin. He wrote the card. He tied the string. On the bus north through Enugu and up toward Nsaka, he rehearsed the moment in his mind. The way she would turn and see him and the careful, managed face she had been performing for months would collapse into the real one underneath. The way she would say Papa in the voice she used when she was not performing anything. He had been a father for 21 years. He knew his daughter's real voice the way he knew engines, by the specific sound of it, by what it meant when something was off. He was going to hear her real voice today. He found the courtyard. She was laughing, her head thrown back, so alive, so Chidima. He raised his hand. He called her name. He watched the door slam shut behind her eyes. Uncle. I think you have the wrong person. I don't know you. What nobody saw, what the friends did not see, what Edora herself refused to fully see, was what happened inside Amadi in the 2 seconds after those words landed. He did not go numb. That is what people say, I went numb, and it is almost never true. What actually happened was the opposite of numb. Everything sharpened. He felt everything at extreme resolution, the sun on his arms, the weight of the bag in his hand, the specific quality of her voice, smooth, controlled, practiced, and the space where his name should have been and was not. I don't know you. He ran through it once, very fast, looking for the mistake. The misunderstanding. The version of this where she was confused or frightened or protecting him from something. There was no such version. He nodded. He picked up his bag. He walked. This is what nobody tells you about that kind of wound, it does not hit you on the street. It waits. It follows you onto the bus and sits beside you without speaking for 4 hours, And then when you are home and the door is closed and you are sitting in the dark workshop you built with your own hands over 30 years, it arrives. All at once. Amadi sat in the dark for a long time. Emeka found him. He came in, saw the darkness, and sat beside him the way you sit beside someone in a hospital, present, quiet, not pretending the situation is anything other than what it is. She said she didn't know me. Emeka closed his eyes. When he opened them, Papa. Rest. I am here. It was not enough. Nothing would have been enough. But it was true, and in that moment truth was the only currency with any value, and Emeka had always been the one who paid in it. That night Amadi lay awake until 4 in the morning and had the most honest conversation of his life, entirely with himself, entirely in the dark. He asked, was I a good father? He answered, yes. And also, not entirely. Not to both of them equally. And I knew it and I called it love when some of it was preference, and there is a difference. He asked, what did I do wrong? He answered, the photo. The school fees. The carburetor. Good. Good boy. 30 years of being a man who notices everything except what is happening inside his own house. And then, beneath all of it, something clear and cold and clarifying. I gave her everything I had. And she looked at me like I was nobody. And Emeka, who I gave everything that was left over, is in the next room. He came and sat with me in the dark and did not ask questions. He just came. What does that say about what I built? And for whom? And whether any of it was what I thought it was? He did not sleep until 4. When he woke at 6, Emeka had already swept the workshop and made his tea. The call came 11 weeks later. Not from Edeora. She did not call. Weeks passed, the suspension notice, the academic misconduct hearing, the social cycle evaporating with the clean efficiency of people who were never really there, and she did not pick up the phone. Because she could not call without saying what she had done. And she could not say it without becoming, fully and irreversibly, the person who had done it. So she stayed in the room and was that person anyway, alone, which was worse. The call Amadi received was from the University Student Affairs Office, brief, administrative, impersonal. His daughter had been placed on academic suspension pending a disciplinary review. He listened standing in the workshop in his work clothes, then put the phone down on the bench and stood over it for a moment. Then he picked up his tools and went back to work. But at night, the questions came. Is she eating? Is she sleeping somewhere safe? Does she think about me? Does she feel anything at all? He did not know that on the other side of those questions, in a small off-campus room in Saka, his daughter was asking the same ones about herself. It began the night after the suspension letter arrived. Edeora had been feeling it for weeks, a tightness in her chest that she kept dismissing, the way you dismiss things when you have larger fires burning. A heaviness that sat beneath her sternum and some mornings made it difficult to take a full breath. She had told herself it was stress. Anxiety. The compressed weight of a life built on deception beginning to buckle. But that night it became something else entirely. She woke at 2 in the morning unable to breathe properly, not the metaphorical inability of panic, but something physical and animal, her lungs refusing to fill, the air stopping somewhere before it should. She sat up in the dark room and tried to breathe slowly and could not. The tightness was a fist now, pressing outward from the inside of her chest, and for the first time since all of this began she was not thinking about Tochi or the suspension or the fabricated identity or any of it. She was thinking, I might die in this room. Alone. And nobody knows I am here. She got herself to the door. Got it open. Made it to the corridor, where a girl from the room next door found her sitting against the wall at 2 in the morning, gripping her own chest with both hands, her face the color of something drained. The campus clinic. A doctor who was young and tired but thorough. Tests. A chest x-ray. 3 hours of waiting in a plastic chair with a hospital gown over her clothes while the fluorescent lights hummed their indifference overhead. The diagnosis was not a death sentence. It was, the doctor explained carefully, a chronic inflammatory condition of the lungs, manageable, treatable, but seriously aggravated by prolonged stress, poor nutrition, and what he called, with the careful language of someone choosing words precisely, a sustained state of psychological pressure. He looked at her over his clipboard when he said this, and she understood that he was seeing more than the X-ray. "Do you have family?" he asked. She almost laughed. She pressed it down. "Yes," she said. "You should go to them." She sat alone in the clinic after he left and looked at her hands in her lap. They were shaking slightly, not dramatically, just a fine, persistent tremor, the body's honest report of what the mind had been refusing to acknowledge. She thought, this is what it cost. 2 years of becoming someone else. This is the bill. She thought about the room she was going back to. The 4 walls. The ceiling she had memorized. The phone she kept not picking up. She thought about the suspension letter and Tochi's clean, efficient disappearance and the social circle that had never been a circle at all, just a collection of people who needed the version of her that no longer existed. And then she thought about a workshop on Ezayaku Road. The sound of metal on metal. A man under a car, humming a hymn. "Papa." She picked up the phone. She scrolled to his name. Her thumb hovered over it. She put the phone down. Not yet. She could not call without saying what she had done. And she could not say it over the phone, from a distance, from behind glass. If she was going to say it, she was going to kneel in front of him and say it to his face. That much she owed him. That much she owed herself. She went back to the room. She did not sleep. In the morning, she took the medication the doctor had given her and packed one bag, not out of drama, but because there was genuinely nothing else worth taking, and she walked to the motor park. While Edeora was finding her way back, 60 days into the silence, Emeka sat across from Amadi at the kitchen table with an expression Amadi had never seen on him before. "Papa," he said. "I need to talk to you about Ada." Amadi looked at him. "You know. I know enough." A silence that had weight and shape to it. "She is my sister," Emeka said. "Whatever she did, she is my sister and she is alone and she is not well. I think you know this." Amadi said nothing. "I'm not asking you to forget it," Emeka said. "I'm asking you not to let her disappear." Amadi looked at this young man across the table, this boy he had taken in from a school, given the leftover pieces of himself to, and felt something move in him that he could not name precisely. "She said she didn't know me," Amadi said. Quietly. Not as an argument. Just the fact it was. "I know," Emeka said. "And when she comes back, because she will come back, Papa, you will have to decide what kind of man you are. But that is for then." He stood. "For now, eat. I made food." He went to the stove. Amadi sat at the table looking at the space Emeka had just occupied and thought about a boy of 8 saying thank you, sir, like a man accepting a contract. Thought about a biscuit on a pillow. Thought about a door closing softly when it had every right to slam. He thought, this is who he became. With what was left over. He ate. 3 weeks before Edeora came home, Emeka graduated. Amadi had taken the day off from the workshop, had told the 2 customers waiting on repairs that something had come up, had ironed his blue kaftan the evening before, had polished the new brown shoes that he still felt were too fine for everyday use. They drove to the Polytechnic in a borrowed car. The ceremony was held on the main field, plastic chairs arranged in rows, a canopy, a brass band that played with more enthusiasm than precision. Families sat together in the afternoon heat and waited. When they called Emeka's name, Emeka Okafor, mechanical engineering, first-class distinction, Amadi heard it from 3 rows back and felt something happen in his chest that was not a medical event but could have been mistaken for one. He watched Emeka walk to the stage. Watched him take the certificate. Watched him shake the hand of the head of department, who said something to him that made Emeka smile, not the polite public smile but the real one, the one Amadi had seen only in private moments, the one that changed his whole face. Emeka Okafor. First class distinction. Amadi sat in the plastic chair in the afternoon heat and did not move for a long moment. He thought, I gave him the small room. I gave him the government school. I gave him the leftover fees and the leftover attention and the leftover space at the edge of the table. He thought, he took everything I gave him, including the things I withheld, and he built this. He thought about the carburetor. Good. Good boy. The door closing softly. 21 years of soft closed doors. He thought, he deserved more than I gave him. He became more than I deserved. Something moved down Amadi's face. He became aware of it and did not wipe it immediately, let it sit there for a moment, in the middle of the crowd, in the afternoon heat, because it was honest and he owed honesty to what he was feeling. Then he wiped it. He straightened. He stood with everyone else when the brass band began to play. After the ceremony, when Emeka came to find him in the crowd, cap slightly crooked, certificate rolled under his arm, Amadi took one step forward and put both hands on the boy's shoulders. He looked at him. Really looked. I should have seen you better, Amadi said. All those years. I should have seen you better. You deserve that. Emeka held his gaze. For a moment neither of them moved. Then Emeka said, quietly and without performance, you came, Papa. Today, you came. It was not absolution. It was not the wiping clean of a ledger. It was something more honest than that, an acknowledgement that things had been imperfect and were still ongoing and that the coming was what mattered in this moment. Amadi nodded. His hands were still on the boy's shoulders. I came, he said. They stood like that for a moment longer. Around them, families took photographs and children ran between the chairs and the brass band packed up their instruments. The afternoon lights fell across the field in long gold bars. Then Emeka said, now let us go home. I want to eat your food. Amadi laughed. It was a sudden, unguarded sound, the kind that surprises the person making it. He could not remember the last time he had made that sound. They went home. Edeora came home on a Wednesday in November. She had packed one bag. Not out of drama, there was simply nothing else left that belonged to the person she was now. The rest had gone, borrowed clothes returned, rented rooms surrendered, the constructed self dismantled piece by piece until there was nothing remaining except her, which turned out to be a great deal less impressive and a great deal more bearable than she had expected. She was thin. The medication was working but her body was still recalibrating, still learning to trust that the crisis had passed, and it showed in the way she moved, careful, deliberate, like someone navigating terrain they are not yet sure will hold. The bus from Saka moved through Enugu and south toward ABA, and Edeora sat and did not look at her phone and conducted, in complete silence, the most brutal self-examination of her 21 years. She did not give herself mercy. She did not construct a narrative where she was the victim. She sat with what she had done and looked at it from every angle and said to herself plainly, you looked at your father's face and you told him he did not exist. You had the words ready. You had decided before he even called your name. Who does that? The landscape outside changed. Red earth. Roadside traders. A junction she recognized. You do. You did. You have to live in the body of the person who did that and figure out what comes next. She pressed her forehead against the cool glass. He carried chin-chin. He tied it with string. He wrote a card. The bus pulled into ABA. She walked from the park toward Isayaku Road. She needed the time, the noise and the familiar smell of the city she had been so desperate to leave wrapping around her like something she had not earned but was being given anyway. She turned onto Isayaku Road. She heard the workshop before she saw it. Metal on metal, the specific rhythm of it, the sound that was the underscore of her entire childhood, the sound she had fallen asleep to and woken to and at some point decided was something to be ashamed of. She stopped on the street and listened to it. Then she walked to the gate. Amadi was under a car. She could see his boots, those same boots, 15 years old, still going. Emeka was at the workbench with a pencil behind his ear, bent over something, and then he looked up and saw her and went completely still. His face moved through several things quickly. Then it settled into something steady. "Papa," he said. Quietly. Aimed at the boots under the car. The boots stopped moving. Amadi rolled out slowly. He sat up on the concrete floor and looked at his daughter, this thin, honest, stripped-back version of her, the constructed one finally gone, and said nothing. Just looked. Edeore walked in. She walked to the middle of the workshop floor, the floor she had swept 1,000 times, the floor she had stood on and been in such a hurry to leave, and she went down on her knees. The concrete was hard and cold. She did not care. "Papa." The word cracked immediately. "I stood in front of everyone and I told them I didn't know you. I had the words ready. I had decided before you even called my name." She stopped. Breathed. "I was ashamed of where I came from and I was a coward and I was wrong and I am sorry. I know that doesn't fix it. I know I don't get to say sorry and have it be fixed. But I am saying it because it is all I have left and I mean it with everything I have, which is not much." She could not continue. The workshop was completely, absolutely silent. Amadi got up from the concrete slowly. He crossed the workshop floor. He knelt in front of her. He reached out and took her face in his grease-lined hands, the hands she had been ashamed of, that she had carefully not mentioned when she described him as being in the automobile industry, and he held it. "I knew you," he said. Quietly, without wavering. "Every Sunday when the phone rang and went to silence, I knew you. When the office called about the suspension, I knew you. You were my daughter in all of it. You are still my daughter. Get up." He pulled her to her feet. He held her. She held him back. Both hands gripping his blue kaftan, the one Chidima had bought him years ago, still holding together, still decent. Emeka turned back to the workbench. His hand found the pencil. His shoulders rose and fell once, a single, deep breath. Then he was steady. He was smiling at a parts diagram that had temporarily ceased to require his attention. After a moment he said, to no one in particular, "I'll make food." Nobody answered him. He went to make food anyway. Stay with this story. The hardest part is over, but what comes next is the part that will change how you see everything that came before it. The months that followed were not a clean recovery. Healing does not move in a straight line, and anyone who tells you otherwise is describing a different thing entirely. Edeore saw the doctor in ABA, a referrer from the campus clinic, a careful man on Iket Ekpin Road who reviewed her file and adjusted her medication and told her plainly that the condition was manageable for life if she managed it, and unmanageable if she did not. She chose to manage it. This was, in its quiet way, the first real choice she had made in 2 years, a choice toward herself rather than away from something. She helped with the workshop accounts. She answered the phone in her own voice. She sat with Amadi in the evenings and they talked, haltingly at first, with silences that lasted too long, and then more easily. One evening she asked him about her mother and he talked about Chidima for almost an hour without stopping, and she sat and listened to her father's voice do something she had never heard it do, purr. One afternoon she stood at the workshop wall and looked at the framed photo. Her mother. Her father on their wedding day. Her own 10-year-old face at the bottom, gap-toothed and absurdly happy. She looked at the empty space around it. Then she looked at Emeka. "You are not in this photo," she said. "No. You were never in it." "No. She looked at the photo for a long moment. She took out her phone and photographed it. Then she photographed Emeka. She did not explain what she was doing. 3 weeks later, a new frame appeared on the wall. Inside it, the original photo, and beside it, Emeka at his polytechnic graduation, broad-shouldered, serious, cap slightly crooked. And below both, a recent photo she had taken herself, Amadi and Emeka at the workbench, both bent over an engine, neither looking at the camera. Nobody said anything about the new frame. Nobody had to. Emeka had already become, by the time Edeora came home, the thing the street talked about with a pride that had no envy in it. He registered the company. Amadi and Sons Auto Engineering. The name was his idea and he had brought it to Amadi one evening folded carefully in his palm. "I want to call it this," he said. "If you agree." Amadi had looked at the paper. Had looked at Emeka. Had tried to speak and found something in the way. He nodded. The certificate went on the wall. 3 apprentices were hired. The business grew with the solidity of something built by someone who has learned that shortcuts are just longer roads. One Sunday Emeka brought home a box and placed it in front of Amadi without ceremony. Inside, a pair of shoes. Brown leather. New. The first new shoes Amadi had owned in 7 years. Amadi looked at the shoes. He looked at Emeka. He opened his mouth. "Wear them to church, Papa," Emeka said. "And when to start the generator?" One evening Emeka was teaching Edeora to identify engine parts. She was a slow student, he was a patient teacher, and this had become a language between them, and she said without looking up, "You should have gone to university first." Emeka considered this seriously. "Maybe," he said. "But I learned things in this workshop that I could not have learned anywhere else." So, he handed her a wrench. "I think it balanced." She took the wrench. "We are family," she said. "We always were," he said. "You just needed to come home to remember it." In the evenings Amadi sat at the workshop entrance and watched Isaiku Road settle into dusk, the noise shifting, the street lights coming on one by one, the day releasing itself the way days do when they are finally done. He thought sometimes about the bus. The chin-chin. The card. From Papa. With love. He had asked Edeora, months after she came home, if she had known, if some part of her had known, in that courtyard, what she was doing to him. She had been quiet for a long time. "Yes," she said. "That is the part one cannot forgive myself for yet." "I knew." He had nodded. Had not made it easier, because it was not easy and making it easier would have been a dishonesty he was no longer interested in practicing. But he had also thought, alone, later, she came back. She knew what she had done and she came back anyway, with one bag and no certainty of welcome. That took something. He thought about Chidinma. He thought about what she would say about all of it, loud, thorough, over several days, right about everything and willing to wait however long it took for him to concede. He missed that. He let himself miss it, which was newer than it sounds. He thought about the graduation field. The afternoon light in long gold bars. "I should have seen you better. All those years. You came, Papa. Today, you came." He thought, "I fix things for a living. Cars, engines, broken parts, if it came to my workshop, I found a way." He thought, "My daughter came back broken. She is on the mend. My nephew never broke, but I should have made more room for him from the beginning, and I will spend whatever time I have left making sure he knows I know that." He thought, "This is what I built. Not perfectly. Not without damage. But still standing. Still open." Inside the workshop, Edeora and Emeka were arguing about the accounts. She had found a discrepancy and was being thorough, and Emeka was defending his numbers with the calm certainty of someone who does not make arithmetic errors and knows it. Their voices overlapped and separated and overlapped again, unguarded, familiar, the sound of two people who have decided, without ceremony or announcement, that they belong to each other. Amadi listened. He picked up his tools. He went back to work. This story is not just about one family on one street in ABA. It is about every person who has ever been ashamed of where they came from. Every parent who kept the light on anyway. Every quiet, overlooked person who showed up every morning and became extraordinary without waiting for anyone to give them permission. If you saw your father in Amadi, share this. If you saw yourself in Edora, share this. If you love someone who has never been in the frame, share this. They need to see it. Even if they don't know it yet. And if you are new here, this is what we do. Subscribe. Come back. There is more.